She left everything behind in India, her family, her dreams, and her future. All for love and a new life in the United States. But just 74 days after arriving, that hopeful journey ended in tragedy. What happened to her? How did a promising young bride's dream turn into a deadly nightmare? Today we uncover the chilling story of a woman whose search for love led to a brutal murder, and the secrets hidden beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect marriage. The call came in at 6:47 a.m. Detective Marcus Hall's phone vibrated against the nightstand as dawn broke over San Jose. The voice on the other end was measured but urgent. We found her. 74 days after her arrival in America, Ananya Dutta's body lay on the cold floor of an abandoned storage unit 15 miles from the upscale apartment she had shared with her husband. Her wrists showed marks of restraint. Her wedding jewelry was missing. And clutched in her rigid fingers, a torn page from her diary. What transforms the American dream into a deadly nightmare? How does a hopeful bride's journey across oceans end in a body bag rather than the promised land of opportunity? The security camera footage from the storage facility would later reveal a figure moving methodically in the pre-dawn darkness. But by then, the truth about Ananya's final days had already begun to surface. A truth that would shake two continents and expose the dangerous fault lines where tradition collides with modern life. Have you ever felt trapped between two worlds, caught between who you are and who others expect you to be? Have you watched someone you care about slowly disappear into a relationship that consumed their identity? Or perhaps you've experienced that gradual suffocation yourself? The quiet erosion of freedom happening so subtly you barely notice until escape seems impossible. Ananya's story begins like thousands of others, with hope, celebration, and promises of a better life. Yet beneath the surface of her seemingly perfect marriage lurked expectations that would eventually crush her. Her journey from confident environmental science graduate to isolated immigrant bride unfolded over just 74 days, each one meticulously documented in a diary that would become central to the investigation. "I left everything behind for a dream that doesn't exist," she wrote 3 weeks before her death. "The walls of this beautiful house are closing in. He is not who I thought he was." Those diary pages, filled with increasingly desperate entries, paint a portrait of cultural isolation, psychological control, and mounting fear. They also contain a code, a series of seemingly random numbers and letters that investigators initially overlooked. This code would eventually lead to the truth about what really happened on day 74. If you're fascinated by stories where cultural expectations, marriage, and migration collide with devastating consequences, hit the subscribe button now. Throughout this investigation, we'll examine not just who ended Ananya's life, but the complex web of circumstances that put her in harm's way. This is not simply a story about a murder. It's about the invisible chains that bind vulnerable immigrants, the price of cultural displacement, and how easily isolation can become deadly when no one is watching. What happens when the person who promises to love you becomes your jailer? The answer lies in the final blood-stained pages of Ananya's diary. Before becoming a statistic in an American crime database, Ananya Dutta was a star student at Jadavpur University in Kolkata. Her professors described her as brilliantly analytical, with a passionate dedication to environmental restoration projects along the Ganges River. At 26, she had already published research on sustainable agriculture and was being courted by several international conservation organizations. She could have gone anywhere with that mind, remembered Professor Kapoor, her academic advisor. Cambridge, Oxford, MIT, all possibilities for her doctoral studies. But in middle-class Indian families like Ananya's, a woman's education often exists alongside traditional expectations. Her parents, a government clerk father and schoolteacher mother, had invested everything in her future, yet still adhered to conventional beliefs about marriage. They viewed her academic achievements primarily as qualifications that would attract a suitable husband. "My parents are progressive enough to educate me," Ananya wrote to a friend, "but traditional enough to believe my ultimate purpose is marriage. I exist in this strange middle ground between modern ambition and ancient obligation." When Ananya turned 26, her parents intensified their search for an appropriate match. Dating apps and matrimonial websites had modernized the arranged marriage process, but the fundamental premise remained. Families sought compatible families, not just compatible individuals. Rohan Desai appeared on their radar through a cousin's connection, a 32-year-old tech entrepreneur who had built a successful startup in Silicon Valley. His profile checked every box: prestigious American education, impressive income, respectable family background, and most importantly, a willingness to preserve cultural values despite his Western surroundings. Their first meeting occurred via video call, a stilted conversation with both sets of parents hovering just off camera. Subsequent calls became more private, with Rohan painting vivid descriptions of life in California. "There's a large Indian community here," he assured her. "You'll continue your environmental work. I have connections at several research institutes. We'll build a modern marriage while honoring our traditions." For Ananya, these promises resolved her internal conflict. Here was a path that seemed to accommodate both her professional ambitions and her desire to fulfill family expectations. Their courtship lasted 3 months, all virtual, before both families approved the match. The wedding preparations consumed Kolkata's rainy season. Endless shopping trips for her trousseau, ritual gatherings with female relatives, and extensive coaching on how to adjust to life abroad. The 5-day wedding celebration transformed her modest neighborhood into a festival ground. Hundreds of guests attended the ceremonies, watching as Ananya circled the sacred fire with Rohan, binding their lives together through ancient rituals neither fully understood but both respected. On her final morning in India, Ananya stood at her bedroom window, watching street vendors set up their carts along familiar roads. Her mother packed her favorite spices while reciting advice about pleasing her in-laws. Her father struggled with paperwork for her visa transfer, his eyes occasionally welling with tears he quickly brushed away. As her flight ascended over the Bay of Bengal, Ananya pressed her palm against the window, watching her homeland dissolve into clouds. The American dream beckoned with promises of freedom and opportunity, but the gilded cage waiting across the ocean would soon become her prison. San Francisco International Airport buzzed with activity as Ananya cleared customs on a crisp October morning. Clutching a small carry-on containing family photos and academic certificates, she scanned the crowd for Rohan. When she spotted him, her exhaustion dissolved into excitement. Her new life was about to begin. "Welcome home," Rohan said, embracing her. He drove a gleaming Tesla through the winding highways of Silicon Valley, pointing out tech headquarters that dotted the landscape. Ananya pressed her forehead against the window, absorbing this new world of endless possibilities. Their apartment occupied the top floor of a luxury high-rise in Cupertino, a stark contrast to her family's modest Kolkata home. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed panoramic mountain views. The kitchen featured marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. Their bedroom suite included a walk-in closet larger than her childhood room. "Is this all ours?" she asked, running her fingers along the polished surfaces. "All yours to manage," Rohan replied with a smile that, in retrospect, contained a hint of expectation. For the first week, they played tourists, visiting Golden Gate Bridge, exploring Stanford's campus, and dining at upscale restaurants where Rohan was greeted by name. Ananya documented everything in photographs sent to her family's WhatsApp group. Their responses, filled with pride and excitement, validated her journey. By week 2, the novelty began wearing thin. While Rohan returned to 14-hour workdays, Ananya found herself alone in the silent apartment. Her dependent visa status prevented employment, and her attempts to connect with environmental organizations as a volunteer met bureaucratic roadblocks. "Maybe next year," Rohan suggested dismissively when she mentioned pursuing certification to work in California. "Focus on settling in first." The neighborhood, pristine but sterile, offered little opportunity for spontaneous interaction. Neighbors exchanged polite nods but seldom conversations. The distance to stores and community spaces made her dependent on Rohan for transportation, a subtle constraint she hadn't anticipated. Then came Sunita, Rohan's mother, arriving unannounced with 4 suitcases and plans to stay, until Ananya was properly adjusted. Her presence transformed the apartment's dynamics overnight. A wife rises before her husband, Sunita instructed on her first morning, finding Ananya reading scientific journals instead of preparing breakfast. Books won't build your family's respect. Under Sunita's watchful eye, Ananya's days became structured around domestic duties. The morning began with elaborate prayers at the small shrine Sunita installed. Breakfast preparation followed specific protocols. Afternoons were dedicated to learning family recipes and proper household management. Evenings centered on serving Rohan's needs when he returned from work. In video calls with her parents, Ananya maintained a bright facade. "Everything is wonderful," she assured them, angling the camera to hide the shadows under her eyes. Her attempts to carve out personal space met resistance. When she joined an online environmental science forum, Sunita commented, "Such Western ideas distract from family priorities." When she suggested exploring career options, Rohan and Sunita exchanged glances before changing the subject. The physical changes in Ananya appeared gradually. Her confident stride shortened to accommodate Sunita's slower pace. Her colorful wardrobe gave way to more traditional attire, appropriate for a daughter-in-law. Her animated hand gestures while speaking, once a trademark, became contained, controlled. Security footage from the apartment lobby, later examined by investigators, documented this transformation. Day 15. Ananya exiting alone, posture straight, eyes curious. Day 32. Walking slightly behind Sunita, gaze lowered. Day 47. Visible weight loss, shoulders curved inward, movements hesitant. By day 60, the woman in the footage barely resembled the bright-eyed bride who had arrived in October. A neighbor later testified, "She seemed to fold into herself, becoming smaller each time I saw her." In her diary found beside her body, Ananya wrote, "The walls of this beautiful prison contract daily. My voice grows fainter. My thoughts, once clear as mountain streams, now muddy under constant criticism. The American freedom I imagined exists outside these glass windows, tantalizingly visible but forever beyond reach." By the third month of marriage, the facade of Rohan's attentive persona had completely dissolved. His work schedule extended without explanation, leaving home at 6 a.m., returning past midnight. When present, his attention remained fixed on his phone, thumbs typing rapid responses to messages he never explained. "It's just work," became his standard reply whenever Ananya questioned his absences. But the financial records recovered during the investigation told a different story. Credit card statements showed dinners for two at exclusive restaurants on evenings when Rohan claimed to be at the office. Hotel charges appeared in neighboring cities, always for weeknight stays. Ananya first noticed these discrepancies when managing the household accounts, a task Sunita insisted she handle while denying her access to their joint banking passwords. "A wife tracks expenses, not bank accounts," Sunita admonished when Ananya requested online banking access. The psychological control mechanisms tightened gradually. Rohan installed a home security system that sent notifications whenever doors opened. "For your safety," he claimed, though the alerts went only to his phone. He questioned Ananya's rare outings, to the grocery store or community center, with increasing suspicion. "Who did you talk to today?" became his evening greeting, followed by questions about what she wore, who looked at her, what topics she discussed. Wrong answers resulted in cold silence that might last for days. Sunita reinforced these constraints through cultural manipulation. "A good wife creates no concerns for her husband," she reminded Ananya daily. "Your behavior reflects on our entire family name." The two women engaged in a silent power struggle over household management. When Ananya prepared meals incorporating Western influences, Sunita would remake them entirely. When Ananya wore Western clothes, Sunita would comment on women who forget their values. When Ananya spoke of environmental science, Sunita interrupted with questions about when she planned to start a family. Ananya's diary, recovered from behind a loose bathroom tile during the investigation, documented this psychological warfare with heartbreaking clarity. Day 42. "I suggested enrolling in a local college course today." Rohan laughed as if I'd told a joke, then changed the subject. Sunita later explained that temporary wives try to establish American credentials to stay if the marriage fails. "Is that what they think I am?" Day 49. "Found a receipt for women's perfume in Rohan's pocket, not mine. When questioned, he accused me of spying and disrespect. Didn't speak to me for 2 days. Sunita said I should apologize for causing tension." Day 56. "My passport is missing from my drawer." Rohan claims he secured it in his office safe. Why? The building's doorman later provided investigators with troubling observations. "She stopped coming downstairs alone after the first month," he testified. "Always with the mother-in-law or husband, walking slightly behind them. Never made eye contact anymore." Elena Martinez, their next-door neighbor and a domestic violence counselor, noticed warning signs professional training had taught her to recognize. "I heard objects breaking several times, followed by a woman crying. Once, I saw her in the elevator with finger-shaped bruises on her wrist. When I asked if she needed help, she stared at the floor until her floor came." Martinez left domestic violence resource pamphlets under their door twice. Both times, building cameras captured Sunita collecting and discarding them before Ananya could see them. Phone records revealed Ananya's increasing isolation. In her first month, she made daily calls to family and friends in India. By the second month, these dwindled to weekly. In the final 2 weeks of her life, she made no calls at all. Her last attempted outgoing call, to the Indian consulate, was disconnected after 14 seconds. The pressure inside the apartment intensified as Rohan's behavior became more erratic. Neighbors reported hearing shouting at odd hours. Security footage showed Rohan pacing the parking garage at 3 a.m., engaged in heated phone conversations. A particularly disturbing diary entry from day 70 read, "He found my application for volunteer work at the environmental center. Tore it up while Sunita watched. Said my place was here serving the family. When I disagreed, he grabbed my throat just for a moment. Not hard enough to leave marks. Just enough to send a message." Sunita pretended not to see. "I am truly alone here." 4 days later, Ananya would be gone. If you're wondering what really happened to Ananya during those final crucial days, comment below with your theories. Did someone besides Rohan have motives to harm her? What secrets might her final diary entries reveal? Your insights could unlock perspectives even investigators might have missed. On the evening of day 74, Rohan's cousin Vikram hosted a dinner celebrating his recent promotion at a prominent tech firm. The invitation extended to the extended family arrived as a gold-embossed card, specifying formal attire and an 8 p.m. start time at Vikram's Los Altos Hills estate. "You'll wear the red silk sari," Sunita instructed Ananya that afternoon, "and the gold jewelry set from the wedding. Our family status must be visible." Ananya nodded mechanically while applying her makeup, concealer carefully covering a fading bruise near her collarbone. Security footage from the elevator showed the three of them departing at 7:42 p.m. Rohan checking his phone, Sunita adjusting Ananya's sari, and Ananya herself staring blankly at the floor numbers as they descended. The mansion sprawled across 2 acres of manicured grounds. Luxury cars lined the circular driveway. Inside, crystal chandeliers illuminated rooms filled with wealthy Indian American professionals discussing stock options and private school admissions. Rohan, Sunita, and the new bride. Vikram's wife greeted them at the entrance, air-kissing Sunita's cheeks before examining Ananya with polite curiosity. "We've heard so much about you." The evening progressed through predictable rhythms of a high-society gathering. Waitstaff circulated with champagne and appetizers. Men clustered in the study discussing business ventures. Women gathered in the living room comparing jewelry and subtly assessing each other's status. Witnesses later reported that Ananya remained silent throughout most conversations, speaking only when directly addressed. She declined alcohol, citing religious observance. Though friends from India confirmed she occasionally enjoyed wine before marriage. "She seemed afraid," recalled Priya Sharma, another recent bride who attempted conversation with Ananya. "When I mentioned my web design courses at the community college, her eyes lit up briefly. Then she noticed Sunita watching from across the room, and immediately changed the subject to recipes. The breaking point came during dinner. 20 guests seated around an ornate table fell silent when Vikram's elderly father asked Ananya about her plans in America. "Such a bright girl from a good university," he remarked. "Will you continue your environmental work here? Vikram's company has a sustainability department." Before Ananya could respond, Sunita interjected, "Ananya's priority is building our family now. Professional women make poor mothers." "Actually," Ananya said, her voice barely audible at first, then strengthening, "I've been researching certification programs to continue my environmental studies." The silence that followed felt physical. Rohan's hand froze midway to his water glass. "We haven't discussed this," he said flatly. "I've tried," Ananya replied, meeting his gaze directly for perhaps the first time in weeks. "You always change the subject." 3 guests later provided police with similar accounts of what followed. Rohan's face darkened as he whispered something to Ananya. She responded more loudly, "I won't apologize for having ambitions," causing nearby conversations to halt. Rohan gripped her wrist beneath the table. "We'll discuss this at home." "There's nothing to discuss," Ananya said, pulling her arm free. "I came to America for partnership, not imprisonment." The dinner guests shifted uncomfortably as the private disagreement became a public spectacle. Sunita attempted to smooth the moment with nervous laughter. New brides need time to adjust to family expectations. Family expectations? Ananya's voice rose. Or family control. "My passport is locked away. My calls are monitored. I'm followed to the grocery store. This isn't marriage, it's captivity." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against marble flooring. "And you," turning to Rohan, "should explain to everyone why you visit hotels when claiming to work late." The glass in Rohan's hand shattered. Blood or wine? Witnesses disagreed, which stained the white tablecloth. What happened next exists only in fragments of conflicting testimony. Some guests recalled Rohan lunging toward Ananya. Others remembered Sunita pulling her toward a side room. Multiple voices raised simultaneously as the dinner devolved into chaos. When order was eventually restored, 3 facts became clear. Ananya was gone. Rohan had a cut on his hand requiring bandaging. No one could definitively say when or how Ananya had left the house. The dinner party dissolved into confused whispers. Guests departed hurriedly, discomfort evident in their rushed goodbyes. Rohan and Sunita returned home without Ananya, telling concerned relatives she had gone for air and would return by taxi. She never did. The security cameras at Vikram's estate captured everything, except the 14 crucial minutes when Ananya Dutta vanished from sight. Rohan Desai reported Ananya missing 48 hours after her disappearance from the dinner party. His delayed response immediately raised flags with the San Jose Police Department. Most concerned spouses contact us within hours, noted the intake officer. Mr. Desai claimed he expected her to cool off at a friend's house, yet couldn't name any friends she might have visited. Detective Marcus Hall, a 15-year veteran of the Missing Persons Unit with specialized training in cultural dynamics, recognized critical inconsistencies in Rohan's statement. He described their relationship as traditional but harmonious, directly contradicting accounts from dinner guests who witnessed their argument. The initial search focused on hospitals, hotels, and transit hubs. Ananya's photographs circulated among law enforcement agencies across Northern California. Her distinctive red silk sari, last seen at the dinner, became a key identifier in the search bulletin. When investigators entered the couple's apartment, subtle evidence contradicted Rohan's narrative of domestic tranquility. A broken glass bangle scattered behind the bedroom dresser. A small bloodstain on the bathroom door frame, partially wiped clean. A lipstick smear on the hallway wall at shoulder height, as if someone had been pressed against it. The apartment felt staged, Detective Hall later testified. Too perfect, like a furniture showroom. No personal photographs of Ananya. No books despite her academic background. Her clothing restricted to a small section of the closet. Most telling was what they didn't find. Ananya's passport, her university diplomas, and any form of identification remained missing. Her laptop yielded minimal personal information. All files dated before her marriage, nothing documenting her time in America. Digital forensic specialists recovered deleted text messages from Rohan's phone revealing conversations with unknown contacts about handling the situation and permanent solutions to temporary problems. The timing of these messages, sent hours after the dinner party, contradicted his claim of unconcern about her absence. The investigation uncovered Ananya's hidden diary behind a loose bathroom tile. Its encrypted entries, written in an academic notation system she developed during university, provided a methodical account of isolation and control tactics. The final entry, dated the morning before the dinner, read, "If anything happens to me, look beyond the obvious suspect. This cage has multiple keepers." Local media initially framed the story as a simple missing persons case. Headlines read, "Indian bride vanishes after family dinner," and "Cultural adjustment blamed in immigrant disappearance." But as details emerged about Ananya's restricted movement and Rohan's controlling behavior, public interest intensified. The Indian American community's response split along generational lines. Older members suggested cultural misunderstanding and advised privacy for family matters. Younger community members organized search parties and created online forums tracking the investigation. Throughout police interviews, Rohan maintained a calculated composure that cracked only when questioned about his finances. Bank records revealed $75,000 transferred to an offshore account the day after Ananya's disappearance. When confronted with this evidence, Rohan terminated the interview and contacted his attorney. Sunita Desai, questioned separately, provided carefully constructed responses that matched Rohan's statements almost verbatim. When presented with contradicting witness accounts from the dinner party, she dismissed them as jealous gossip from westernized women who don't understand our traditions. As the investigation progressed, Detective Hall identified an alarming pattern affecting dependent visa holders like Ananya. "We discovered similar cases throughout the Bay Area, educated women brought to America through arranged marriages, then systematically isolated from support systems. Their immigration status, controlled by spouses, creates perfect conditions for abuse. Most cases go unreported because victims fear deportation if they seek help." This wider context transformed Ananya's disappearance from an isolated incident into evidence of a systemic failure to protect vulnerable immigrants. As investigators examined Rohan's financial records, the facade of his successful tech career collapsed. His startup had failed 18 months earlier, burning through venture capital without producing viable products. The luxury apartment, Tesla, and lavish lifestyle were maintained through elaborate financial deception. He created shell companies to launder money from investors, explained forensic accountant Julia Chen. The marriage to Ananya coincided with his most desperate financial period. Interestingly, he increased her life insurance policy to $2 million just 30 days after her arrival. Parallel investigations in India revealed Rohan had misrepresented his wealth to Ananya's family. The successful entrepreneur had actually accumulated over $850,000 in debt. Marriage provided both cultural respectability and a potential financial solution if something happened to his new bride. Interviews with extended family members exposed the cultural pressures that facilitated Ananya's vulnerability. Rohan's cousin Vikram, reluctantly cooperating after receiving immunity, described family expectations. "Reputation matters above all else in our community," he explained. When Ananya challenged Rohan publicly at the dinner, she violated the cardinal rule: family problems stay private. His authority was questioned in front of peers. In traditional mindsets, this humiliation demands response. Other relatives described Sunita's controlling influence over her son. "She wanted a daughter-in-law who would serve, not succeed," one aunt confided. Ananya's education threatened Sunita's position in the household hierarchy. She repeatedly told Rohan that Western influence was corrupting his wife. Cryptography experts finally decoded Ananya's diary system, revealing entries far more disturbing than initially understood. What appeared to be academic notations were actually coded descriptions of escalating abuse. "R struck me today when dinner was late." S watched, nodding approval. "The message is clear: they work as a unit. One enforces through tradition, the other through force." Found pregnancy test in S's shopping bag. "They discuss me as a vessel when they think I'm sleeping. My purpose is clear to them now." Discovered my degree certificates in shredder bin. When confronted, our said education doesn't matter for mothers. They're erasing who I was. Dr. Meera Kapoor, specialist in cross-cultural psychology, provided context for the investigation. Immigrant brides often face triple isolation: geographic, linguistic, and cultural. Their identity becomes contingent on their husband's family's approval. When they resist assimilation, the resulting conflict can escalate to violence, particularly in households where women are viewed primarily as extensions of family legacy rather than autonomous individuals. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Storage facility manager Carl Jenkins noticed a tenant accessing unit number 247 at unusual hours. Company policy requires check-in for visits between 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., Jenkins explained. This guy came at 3:30 a.m. 3 nights after the missing person report hit the news. Seemed nervous, kept looking over his shoulder. Security footage identified the visitor as Rohan. A judge approved an immediate search warrant for the storage unit. Inside, investigators discovered the missing pieces: Ananya's passport and identification documents hidden inside a locked briefcase. Her phone contained deleted text messages to the Indian consulate requesting emergency assistance. Most damning was a voice recording Ananya had secretly made during an argument the morning before the dinner party. In the recording, Rohan can be heard saying, "If you embarrass me at Vikram's dinner, there will be consequences. Remember, you have no identity here without me. No one would even notice if you disappeared." Forensic analysis of the storage unit yielded the final evidence: microscopic blood spatter matching Ananya's DNA on a tarp stuffed into a plastic container, and soil samples consistent with the remote location where her body was eventually found. But the most shocking revelation came from Sunita's seized computer. Email correspondence between Sunita and a man named Rajiv Kumar revealed that Ananya wasn't Rohan's first bride. 3 years earlier, another woman from India had come to America, lived briefly in the same apartment, and then returned to India for family reasons. No record of this woman ever leaving the United States existed in immigration databases. The trial of Rohan and Sunita Desai became one of California's most closely watched criminal cases. Prosecutors charged both with first-degree murder, presenting evidence that they worked in tandem, Rohan executing the physical act, Sunita assisting in both planning and cover-up. The courtroom filled daily with members of the Indian American community, domestic violence advocates, and immigration rights activists. Media coverage extended internationally, with Indian news channels broadcasting daily updates to Ananya's hometown in Kolkata. This case isn't just about a murder, District Attorney Eleanor Chin stated in her opening argument. It's about the weaponization of cultural expectations and immigration vulnerabilities to control and ultimately eliminate a woman who sought only to maintain her identity. The defense team attempted to frame Ananya's death as accidental, a heated argument that escalated unintentionally. This strategy collapsed when prosecutors presented the voice recording from Ananya's phone capturing Rohan's threats, followed by forensic evidence of premeditation. After a 6-week trial and 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts for both defendants. Rohan received a sentence of life without parole. Sunita, convicted as an accessory, received 25 years to life. The judge cited their calculated exploitation of cultural and immigration power dynamics as aggravating factors in sentencing. Beyond the courtroom, Ananya's case catalyzed significant policy reforms. California passed the Ananya Act, requiring police departments to implement specialized protocols for cases involving dependent visa holders. Immigration authorities established emergency visa protections for immigrants facing domestic abuse, removing the threat of deportation for those seeking help. The Indian consulate, criticized for its inadequate response to Ananya's attempted outreach, implemented a mandatory welfare check system for new immigrant spouses, including private interviews without family present. Within the Indian American community, Ananya's story broke decades of silence surrounding domestic violence. Daughters of Ananya, a support network founded by domestic violence survivor Priya Sharma, created safe houses specifically for South Asian immigrant women. Their 24-hour helpline now operates in 12 languages, receiving over 500 calls monthly. Each call represents an Ananya who might be saved, Sharma explained. We've helped 278 women escape dangerous situations in our first year alone. On the anniversary of Ananya's death, community members gathered to unveil a mural on San Jose's Roosevelt Community Center. The artwork depicts Ananya as she was before coming to America, confident, intellectual, gazing toward the future with determination. Beneath her portrait, excerpts from her environmental research papers remind viewers of her scientific contributions. Dr. Lakshmi Raghavan, cultural psychologist specializing in immigrant family dynamics, emphasizes the broader implications of Ananya's case. Cross-cultural marriages can be beautiful bridges between worlds, but only when built on mutual respect for individual autonomy. When tradition becomes a tool for control rather than connection, the foundation crumbles. For families considering international marriages, Ananya's story offers crucial lessons. Cultural integration should enhance rather than erase identity. Red flags include isolation from community resources, restricted communication with family, withheld documentation, and pressure to abandon professional aspirations. Law enforcement officials now receive specialized training to recognize these warning signs. Detective Hall, who led the investigation, conducts workshops nationwide on cultural sensitivity in domestic violence cases. Ananya's voice was silenced, he notes, but her story now speaks for thousands. This tragedy could have been prevented. Share this video to raise awareness about domestic isolation in immigrant communities. One share could reach someone who needs this information to recognize danger before it's too late. Ananya Dutta never wanted to become a symbol. She simply sought what many take for granted, the freedom to be both culturally connected and individually fulfilled. Her journey across oceans ended tragically, but her story continues to save lives through the systems and awareness her case created. In death, Ananya accomplished what she couldn't in life, forcing communities to confront the dangerous imbalance that occurs when tradition becomes a weapon rather than a foundation. Her legacy lives in the hundreds of women who now recognize control disguised as cultural preservation, who find courage to seek help before becoming statistics. Every community holds these tensions, between honoring heritage and embracing evolution, between collective values and individual rights. Ananya's story reveals the human cost when this balance fails. Tradition at its best provides roots and identity. At its worst, it becomes justification for control and violence. Look around your neighborhoods, workplaces, and social circles. Do you see someone gradually disappearing into isolation? A once vibrant person whose voice grows quieter, whose presence diminishes. These subtle transformations often precede tragedy. Recognition leads to intervention. Intervention saves lives. Behind every headline about domestic violence exists a complex human being with dreams, talents, and unrealized potential. Ananya was an environmental scientist whose research could have protected watersheds for generations. She was a daughter whose parents still place fresh flowers beside her photograph each morning. She was a woman whose right to self-determination was deemed less important than her role in someone else's narrative. What happens when we value people for who they might become rather than what purpose they might serve? How might our communities transform if cultural heritage enhanced rather than restricted human potential? If this story moved you, subscribe to True Crime Dossier for more cases that illuminate overlooked social issues. Together we can ensure that stories like Ananya's don't just shock us. They change us, and through that change, save others who still have time.